All right, what is going on, everybody? Wanted to do this video here walking through MLB Showdown strategy. With it being October, with getting into the playoffs, a lot more focus on MLB Showdown as we approach the World Series here, and then obviously through the World Series, a lot of single game slates. So I wanted to do a single game slate focused show for you guys. So let's jump right in. Going to get SaberSim pulled up here, and there aren't any single game slates today, but wanted to just walk through a previous one here, kind of talk strategy and go from there. So first thing that we're going to do is look at this Arizona-Milwaukee. This was game 2. Arizona ultimately ended up winning this game, but what can we learn process-wise? What can we do? So I'm going to kind of walk through my process here and talk about those things. So first thing that I'm really going to do here, just go and check the weather. This MLB weather Roto Grinders dashboard run by Kevin Roth is great, easy to use here. There will be a forecast, show you, what direction the wind is. Do we have any rain? Do we have to worry about anything, right? Just getting some general information about the area here can be helpful and can help you to make good decisions about pitchers, etc. here, right? If it's going to rain, maybe the pitchers are going to get pulled early. Maybe you want to take that into account, right? So understanding that information, maybe winds are blowing out and it's hot, right? So another really good thing to know. So checking here is important. Another thing I would really do here, which we'll get into, right? So I think that one thing that you really want to do is look at the pitchers, right? Spend some time looking at the pitchers for both teams here. Since this is a showdown, the sites are going to handle the players as captains and utilities. You can still look solely at the pitchers by just right-clicking on a position, on the position header here up at the top, and then scrolling down, only selecting relief pitchers and starting pitchers. One other thing I like to do is just set a point filter here to only show players with a projection greater than 0, just to get rid of all these guys that down here that are either out or not on the starting roster, things like that, right? But all these players that are available are going to have some type of projection because at some point within our thousands of game sims, they pitched, right? So good to know there. So it looks like we're expecting Zach Gallen to start that game here. And then we're expecting him, actually not seeing this here. So if I go over to utility, maybe. So interesting here that there is no projected pitches. So I'm just going to make a note for myself here. No projected pitches for Showdown. But from there, we can look at which relief pitchers we're expected to pitch. And this is where I really think you can add a lot of value. So over the thousands of game sims, right, all these different relief pitchers ultimately get into the game here. But I think that you can do some curation here and spend some time and try to figure out who is most likely to pitch, right? So I think that this RotoWire baseball bullpen usage dashboard here is going to be your best resource here. And what I would do is I'm going to look at Arizona first, right? So let's say that maybe Milwaukee ends up winning this game 2 and they have to play a game 3, right? So the series is tied 1-1, and I want to look at the bullpen usage and I want to figure out, okay, who's most likely to pitch, right? Well, in this case, Ginkel, Thompson, and Seawald all pitched back-to-back days already, right? So you can see that they've all pitched back-to-back days. Usually, relief pitchers are not going to pitch 3 days in a row. The playoffs can be a little bit different here, but the guys that I would really focus on worrying about are probably Ginkel and probably Seawald. I think the fact that Thompson only threw 8 pitches leaves the door open for him to be able to pitch on Thursday. But Ginkel and Seawald are probably 2 guys that I want to avoid here. And then possibly target somebody like Mantiply and Castro, who got into the first game of the series, pitched, 10 to 15 pitches, but then did not pitch on Wednesday, right? So I think that, Mantiply and Castro are definitely going to be available. I would be nervous about Seawald and Ginkel. So something that I like to do here is go and just look at the amount of pitches, the amount of projected points that those players have. So Ginkel and Seawald, we said here. So Ginkel has 2.06. Seawald has 0.76. So in total, that's 2.84 points. And then how can I take those 2.84 points and spread them around to other pitchers, right? SaberSim has basically already distributed these fantasy points to relief pitchers. So I'm not adding more points. I'm not subtracting more points. I'm just taking the points already being used and redistributing it to other relief pitchers here. So that's what I'm going to do in this case. So I have 2.84 fantasy points. And like I've said here, I think that, Mantiply and Castro are probably two good pieces to use here. Maybe even Sal Frank, since he's already pitched, and then maybe even Thompson, right? So what I'm doing is saying, okay, these guys are getting into the games and in these high leverage spots, right? These are the playoff games. These other games on Sunday, these were late in the year, maybe not a lot going on here. You can go and look like, hey, did the Diamondbacks have to win to get into the playoffs, right? And you could go and see how the usage worked out there. But I'm not going to do that in this example. I think that's like an extra research step you could take here. But for now, I'm just going to kind of distribute that to Thompson, Castro, and Sal Frank. I think I'm going to give the most fantasy points here to Thompson and then distribute it from there, right? So let's go down. Let's move Ginkel to 0 points. Move Seawald to 0. And then let's go and take those points to Thompson here. So I'm going to give Thompson like a 1 point boost here, 2.45 here. I'm going to give Mantiply, which I think is probably like the second best guy, a 1 point boost here. So get him up to 2.93. And then also move Sal Frank. We said Sal Frank was our other guy here. Oh, and Castro, right? So I could probably split this up a little more. So let's go Sal Frank. Let's give him like half a point maybe. And then let's give Castro that remaining 0.34. So put him at 0.71. I think, one other thing thinking through this here is that you see that Ginkel is the highest projected pitcher here at 2.06. I'm kind of okay using that as like a cap. So like, hey, no relief pitcher was projected for more than 2.06. So maybe I don't want to project anyone for more than that, right? So then what I could do is I can just cap these guys out at 2.06. So go back to Mantiply, put him at 2.06. Go back to Thompson, put him at 2.06. And then, take those points that I just took away from these guys, right? So instead of 1 point to Mantiply, I did 0.13 here. So then I have 0.87 to distribute. And then I took about 0.61 here. So 0.39. So I have that 0.39, the 0.87 here. So that comes out to like around 1.2-ish points here. And then maybe I just go and distribute that, right? So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 other relief pitchers. I'm trying to get rid of 1.2 points approximately here. So I just go and add 1.3 to each, right? So 1.3, I add 0.3 to each player. So then that would be 1 to 1.3. That would be 0.8 to 1.1. That would be 0.71 to 1.01. And then 0.83 to 1.13, right? And then now I have basically said who I think is most likely to pitch, Mantiply, Thompson. I've given some extra points to all these other guys that are 1, available, but 2, unlikely to pitch, right? And then, or a little less likely. And then one thing that I would also like to do is we have Ryan Nelson here. He is a starter with a very high salary here. I don't know if there's a report or something that, maybe he can come into the game, but I would like to do some additional research there, right? So what I'm going to do is RotoWire, you can search for players here and just see if there's any news on them, right? So I'm going to type in Ryan Nelson here, and then I can just see like, hey, is it likely that he pitches, right? And then I can go and look. No news since September 17th, so not a ton there. Another thing I can do is go to this baseballreference.com, and then I can search for him, and then I can see, what do his appearances look like, right? Is he coming out of the bullpen? Is he not? Go to his game logs for 2023. And this is game log down here at the bottom. So he did pitch on October 1st here, and he did throw 1 inning, right? He has some of these shorter inning outings here. His last 6 starts have all been 50 pitches or less here. So I think it's possible that he pitches, especially with this October 1st 1 inning outing here. So ultimately, I'm okay giving him some projection here. I think that's fine, right? But with his salary, it's probably very unlikely that he gets into lineups, but nevertheless, could definitely be part of that bullpen rotation there. So I think that's fine. But that was just something that I wanted to check. So now that we've made our adjustments here, one thing I need to do, go back to position, recheck in all positions here. And then now that I've made my adjustments here, right, set my filter, just going to remove those players, I can go to the next step here. And really, beyond this, right? So these are the changes that I've made. These aren't the changes that are reflected everywhere. Big point there that I want to make, because running your lineups. So basically the next step of that I want to do is I want to run a cash lineup. I want to just see what is the most common cash construction going to be, etc. here, right? Well, more often than not, the cash lineups are not going to have my changes taken into account. So in order to effectively run a cash lineup to get realistic ideas about what the field is going to do, I need to open up a second build workspace here, right? Something with fresh projections, no adjustments made, and just use this, right? So I'm going to go here into my build 2 workspace here. I'm going to make a very small adjustment to projections to 0.01 here. Make 2 adjustments to projections. Going to change build mode to optimizer mode here. And I'm just going to build the top 20 lineups here and just see what comes out on the other side, right? So going to just be building based on a traditional optimizer format, trying to mimic what the field is going to do here and just build the top 20 lineups. So from here, I can get some ideas about what I think the field might be doing, right? So first thing that I'm going to do is just come over here to the right, sort by exposure here at the top. And then I want to first look at, I actually want to look at stacks first. So in Showdown, I don't think you get a lot from looking at the stack exposure, 4 2s, 3 3s, 5 5s. I think you actually get a lot more information by looking at team stacks, because you can see which team is being 5 stacked, which team is being 4 stacked, right? So this is a little more in depth. So not a ton of 5 stacks here, or 5 1s for that matter. A lot of Milwaukee 4 2s. So I'm going to make a note of this, right? So 4 2 favor Milwaukee here. And then some less even stacks, right? But it looks like Milwaukee 4 2s are our very most popular stacks here. So good to note there. And then I'm going to come over to captains. And then I want to see who are the most exposed captains. And it looks pretty spread out, to be honest here. Some favor on Freddie Peralta, all things considered, being the starting pitcher for Milwaukee. But not even a lot of exposure on Zach Gallen. But even then, Freddie Peralta expected to be about 33% owned. His exposure is coming in right about there. So not a ton there. I think that the most interesting thing here that I'm seeing is that we're seeing a ton of leverage, and I'm just using this leverage column as an example, which I could sort by. Bryce Terrain is coming in very high here in the captain spot. So I'm going to make a note of him. I think it's kind of strange to see an 8-hole hitter get so much exposure here or leverage overall. That tells me that, his salary with his, he's probably just a high point per dollar play here. And if I sort by value, I bet that he's probably the top value, which he is here. So you can see that, building in this traditional optimizer format, you're going to get a lot of the highest value plays, the highest point per dollar plays, because the traditional optimizer, in a sense here, is trying to fit in as many projected points as possible. So Bryce Terang and Freddie Peralta are our 2 most popular captains here. I am more concerned about playing Terang than I am Freddie Peralta, being that, he's a lot closer to his ownership here, and he is a starting pitcher. So wary of Terang here, and okay with Freddie Peralta, all things considered here. So these are my takeaways. Milwaukee 4 2s, Tarangs are going to be popular and Freddie Peraltas are going to be popular. Now that I have an idea of what I think the field is going to do, I can go back to my own build, run my own lineups, use this information to guide me as to what I may or may not want to do and go from there, right? So I'm going to go to SaberSim here. Going to go back to build 1 where I had already made my own projection adjustments here. And then what I'm going to do, or actually, one thing I didn't cover here is that the process of looking at the relief pitchers for Arizona, I would also do that for Milwaukee here. I'm not going to do it for the sake of time for this video, but that is something I would do for both teams. So I would go back to the bullpen usage. I would go over to Milwaukee, and then I would basically try and figure out the same type of thing, right? So, someone popping out to me, Devin Williams, if there was a game on Thursday here, I think Devin Williams is probably very likely to pitch because he threw 31 pitches, got the day off. Chances are, they were going to him game 1, letting him get a lot of innings. I would expect for him to get probably a lot of pitches if there was a game 3 here, right? So that's just another nugget there. Maybe Pyomps as well. And then, maybe take some pitches away from your Uribe, right? Pitching back-to-back days, 15 and 20 pitches on both days there. So just some notes there. I would make those projection adjustments and then run my lineups. But going to skip that step, going to go straight to building my lineups there, but just want to kind of talk through that for you guys. So going to build just 500 lineups here, nothing more. Don't think I need much more than that for this example. But just letting my lineups finish building here. We'll get into the post build, make any last adjustments, and then talk about finishing touches here. So I'm going to do this as if I'm only building 20 lineups here. And then a couple things you could do, right? So if you're on the standard or pro plan, I would stick with the single game Saber score here. This is specifically made for single game formats here. The small slate is for slates that have 2 to 5 games on it. So not a good short sorting metric for this example here. So stick with the single game. If you are on the ultimate plan, you could run a contest sim, right? So just remember that you can go to contest. You can upload your entries file, and then from your entries file, whatever contest you're playing, you can just right click on them and then add a contest sim. So say that I am putting 20 lineups into this $4. It's a 17 max. So we'll just do it as if I'm doing that. So right click, add a contest sim, save those settings, go back to build 1. I'm actually going to adjust my number of lineups to 17 here once this loads up. So 17, we're just going to say we're building for that contest. And then from there, I have my contest sim set, going to check it, going to start it here, and then I'm going to run it, right? So one thing that I've been experimenting with for Showdown here is using a filter, really, and there's no wrong or right way to do this. I think you could do this a lot of different ways. So one thing you could do, right? So contest sim ran. If I scroll down here, I'm going to see all of my contest sim settings here. So one thing I could do is I could either sort by these metrics, right? I could sort by risk adjusted ROI. I could sort by ROI. I would suggest sorting by these two more often than not here, as opposed to these other options here. So let's say I want to sort by risk adjusted ROI. I think that's fine, right? Another thing that you could do, and then you can scroll down and see what these values are returning here. Another thing you can do, set a filter, right? Maybe I want to filter where I want to say show lineups with, and I go into this contest sim with ROI greater than 0, right? And I want to say I only want to play lineups that had a positive ROI in the sim. So one thing that's really interesting looking at this, right, is that 369 lineups went to the trash automatically, right? So now our pool is only 131 lineups in total. So I find that very interesting here. So then now that I know that I am working with a pool of only positive ROI lineups, how do I get from 131 down to 20, right? So that would be step 2 here. So one thing that I want to do is go in and look at those stacks that I was talking about, right? So how many of these Milwaukee 4-2s am I playing? And it looks like I'm playing 0, right? I'm actually playing all 5 1s in favor of Milwaukee or in favor of Arizona. I think that's fine. And, not playing any 3-3s, not playing any 4-2s in favor of Arizona, but just playing these big stacks. So ultimately, I'm okay with this at the moment. Don't want to make any adjustments here, and happy to go and look at some other ideas here. So one thing I do want to look at is our captains, right? So we talked about this. Freddie Peralta, very popular captain. Bryce Terang, a popular captain. No Terang here, so I'm okay with that. Freddie Peralta getting some positive leverage on him. I think it's fine. I think that you can make a case to just match the field on Freddie Peralta or even be under the field. It's going to come down to a couple things. It's going to come down to the size of your contest, right? So when I was setting up this contest sim for this $4.17 max I was playing, I noticed that there's only about 600 entries in this contest. Well, with there only being 600 entries, the chances of me being duplicated go down significantly, right? So another way to do that would be a geomean calculation here. So what I could do is I can pull up my calculator, and I'm just going to do that for you guys here. So let's pull up, not that screen, this screen, but this screen here. All right, so I have my calculator pulled up. So what I can do is, let's say that I want to only build unique lineups. I think I want to play lineups that aren't going to be duplicated. So what I do is I do this geomean formula to give me an idea of what I need my geometric mean / product ownership to be here. So I'm going to do 1, which is the number of dupes that I'm optimizing for, divided by the number of entries in the contest, 594, close the parenthesis, do that to the power of 1 divided by 6 here. I need that in parentheses, and then I need to just solve that. So basically, any lineup that has a geomean less than 34.5 here, if I'm just going to move the decimal over 2 places, is expected to be unique here. So then what I could do is go back to SaberSim here, and then from here I could say, okay, let's put another filter here. And first thing you need to do is you need to have a geometric mean custom metric. So what you would need to do is have a custom metric here. I'm just going to get rid of some of these other ones to just get them out of our way. And this geomean one is one that I already created. So I went in here, I named it geomean. I set it to my own product geomean value. So what this is going to do is going to look at each of your lineups, and it's going to calculate the geomean of that lineup here, right? And if I scroll over, you're going to be able to see the ownerships here. And then this geomean calculation is going to show you what the product ownership geomean of this lineup is, right? So if I come in here, if I want to sort by geomean, it's like, hey, I want to see the highest geomean to lowest. So the highest here is 27.7. So our threshold that we had was 34.5. So I know that each lineup in my set is approximately, I'm expecting all of these lineups to be unique because they're all well under that threshold. So with the fact that they're under the threshold, I would be okay playing Freddie Peralta in these lineups here. So I'm going to go back to my risk-adjusted ROI sorting metric here, and then go back and look at what I was returning. So a couple things here, you don't have to use risk-adjusted ROI. I think that, using it as a, I think it's an option, right? I would say between risk-adjusted ROI and the single game saber score are going to be 2 good metrics to use here. I like using the custom metrics to get to a pool of lineups where I'm basically comfortable playing all lineups here. So that's another thing, right? And you can see how these exposures change significantly, right? Going to single game saber score bumped down Freddie Peralta, actually invited a lot more captains here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 captains with the single game saber score, as opposed to only 5 captains. So we added 4 captains, spread that exposure around significantly here. I think both of these sorting metrics are fine, and I would use one of these, see what lineups are passing the eye test for you, see what lineups make the most sense for you here. You can also scroll down and just see, what are the ROIs of these single game saber scores that are returning the highest, and then basically decide where you want to go from there. I think that's really up to you, whatever lineups make the most sense to you, right? I also want to go back and check my team stacks. And then I am getting some Milwaukee 4-2s here, but I'm getting way less than what the pool was giving me overall here. So a lot of these lineups look a lot more spread out. So that's usually what you're going to see with the single game saber scores, as opposed to the ROIs, right? The ROIs are saying, hey, this type of lineup just did so well on average across the sims that you want to play those. So it might find a lineup that's highly correlated that it really likes, and then really just kind of hammer that style of lineup. The single game saber scores are going to give you something that is a little more spread out here. So I would make that decision for you personally here and figure out which way you want to go. But that's about it. I think that these lineups are solid. Just remember that when we are running these showdown lineups, when we are building these showdown lineups for you, we are taking individual game sims from each game on the slate, playing that out play by play at bat here, and then building you a lineup that is backed up by a single game simulation here. So we're not using average projections. We're not trying to build the highest projected lineups. We are, building strong lineups from our simulation database. So I'm comfortable playing any of these lineups at this point. But that about does it for this video. Appreciate you guys watching this. Good luck in the MLB playoffs this year, and I will talk to you guys soon. Thanks. Bye.